but so I was asked by some friends to join their fantasy league, and
And
I no, I don't feel ready. I feel
you're ready. No, 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 no,
see
no.
this, it scares me. I don't
Join.
want to.
Okay. Here's what you do.
Okay.
You just fuck around and find out. Here's
Okay.
what you do. Pick players that are highly ranked but have cool names. Or like Patrick Mahomes got a new adult haircut, so
Uh-huh.
I drafted him first, which
Yes.
okay, I wanted Josh Allen, but okay. Um, Pick guys that you think are cool and that fit the positions that you need. Cool names, I'm all down. There's a dude named Hollywood. There's a dude named Tank. Come on. And you can't go wrong with the guy that's Dicker the kicker.
I should have consulted you. I would have chosen Dicker the kicker. And I
Yeah.
would just choose like who looks best in those little football tights.
The Hollow Bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Hollow Bunny Leadership Podcast. I'm Kristen Zeman, and I am here with my steadfast, sage, and spirited sidekick, Sylvia Moyer. Okay, how was that?
Oh my God. People
Did
are
that?
going to come out of the wood. There were like 4 descriptions.
Yeah. Did you all of the S's? That was like times alliteration
It's
times
stunning.
2. Did that
It's
blow your head off?
stunning. It's stunning. It's smart. It's snappy.
Yeah.
Oh my,
Yeah.
how?
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Goodness,
I've
you
really been
exceed
working on it today.
expectations. You
Yeah.
exceed expectations
Oh my God.
over and over.
Yeah.
And you
I
know
thank
what?
you so much. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
it's true. You see, here's the thing. You have courage. You taught me how to have the courage to suck at something new. You continue to exceed expectations. Everything is just, wow, today is something.
Yeah, it's something. It's something. So today we are talking about unpacking the Harvard Business Review article by Ranjay. Is it Gulate?
Well, I don't know,
Can we
but
call it Gulate? Because I
we
was like
can
kind of,
now.
yeah,
We
Gulate,
can
and
now.
it's his article is called "Now is the Time for Courage," and
Yep.
it's a bold title. And Gulati argues that when times are uncertain, whether it's economic downturn, turbulence in the political world, or technological disruption,
Yep.
that leaders often freeze. And so we're going to unpack his core message today because he says that's a mistake. And so we're going to unpack it all, but we're not just going to nod along. We're going to wrestle with it. We're going to agree with it where it makes sense. We're going to challenge it, maybe where it doesn't match reality. And because as you guys know, that's what fills up the Hollow Bunny.
It sure does. And this is really on the heels of you asking all of us to make some choices, to identify our fight or flight, because he did say the bottom line is that courage is a choice, that it is a choice, and courage is something that all executives need to make part of who they are in order to thrive in uncertain times and in this world. And we've said this several times that earlier this year, 2025, Gallup came out with a poll that said for the first time in, I think ever, they said that hope was what employees said they needed most from their leaders, hope and trust. And we think courage is part of this entire process of building hope, giving hope. This is all a choice. And Kristen, you really put a finer point on this when you said, look, when tough stuff hits, we got to figure out what is our default. And we've been picking this apart for quite some time. So this is the right time. And I want to say something before we get down the road too much. Kristen and I dive into Harvard Business Review and some other journals and books and articles and things because we grapple with these issues and then we go out into the environment to find what helps us answer these questions for folks. So we refer to those and we hope that you jot them down. I, yellow pad, pencil.
Mm-hmm.
Kristen has super high tech, but we really urge you as we refer to these kind of articles and books to jot them down. See if you want to dive in some more and learn more from what we've cited. Because
Yeah.
some of this
Well,
comes from our reading, some from experience, some from what we hear and witness, etc. Right?
yeah, and from, just being big sports fans also. And I mean, like I said, this is a great segue because I lacked the courage to join a fantasy football league this year
That's
because
sad.
I thought I wasn't prepared enough. And I think this is a really good parallel about leaders who over prepare, who are, and the way this article starts, which I did like the way he outlined it. And one is very simple, is the foundation, which is the call for courage. And
For
that's precisely what we're talking about, is the courage to make the move. And I will say, this isn't just for CEOs. So those of you listeners who are not leading an organization, it applies to you parents, to you teachers, to you community leaders, to anyone who faces a choice between staying in the comfort zone or stepping into risk.
sure.
And
Yep.
I have found, throughout my life and career that those leaders who were so risk adverse did not move the organization forward, did not elevate the organization, did not disrupt the status quo because they played it safe. So maybe nothing happened, maybe we didn't fall backwards, but we certainly didn't grow during that time. So I think it's so important to say that there has to be a call for courage.
Right. Because so many, when people are faced with really difficult stuff or a lot of chaos, some hunker down. I'm just going to wait it out. I'm just going to try and see if some other crisis occurs somewhere else so that nobody pays attention to mine. And then some actually take what is defined as courage, the willingness to take bold, risky actions for some worthy purpose to advance an organization or advance self, advance a cause, despite the fear. And it's so funny. This is like the year of addressing fear.
It
And
is.
it is really. And so we talked about it like when I was bungee jumping in New Zealand,
Mm-hmm.
right? I just
Mm-hmm.
kind of forgot to be afraid. I just
Exactly.
did it. So I just think we have all kinds of examples where people do courageous things. So we know what it is. So what might we do to develop courage?
Well, so, and I want to pull on that thread for just a minute, because I think there's a process here. Your story really resonated with me when you were bungee jumping, and you said that. And for our listeners who listen to us, every time a pod drops, Sylvia said that on the podcast. She said, "I just forgot to be afraid," and it stopped me in my tracks. But I want to back up, because there is a step before that that I believe got you to that place.
Okay.
You said it. You said it a little earlier, that courage isn't the absence of fear. What courage is, it's deciding that fear doesn't get to be in charge, and then taking a bold action and doing the thing. So
Okay.
you have done that so many times in your life. You have done the thing while scared. That's the title of my next book. It's called Do It Scared. You've done it while you were scared. And that means that every time you embark upon something new or something that scares you, like bungee jumping, what happens is you draw from your experience of being afraid and doing the thing anyway. So when you did that thing, it wasn't so much that you forgot to be afraid, it's that you've built up the trust and confidence in yourself to know that it's going to be okay. And so I think that confidence is built. People think confidence kind of happens, that you have to become confident before you do the bold thing. And I think doing the bold thing, failing, falling short, overcoming fear, makes you confident. So I don't know, chew on that for a minute, but you had the confidence to know, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be okay. That's why you forgot to be afraid.
Right. Because it kind of stemmed from, it was an outgrowth, I suppose, of doing a lot of really risky stuff. And risk isn't just going into something dangerous. Risk is freaking asking somebody on a date. Risk is speaking your truth. Risk is actually saying, how do you like this, how I said this or wore this, or it can be
Mm-hmm.
something super inconsequential, but you're asking with the intent to get genuine feedback, right? So I think it's just an outgrowth of sucking at a lot of stuff. And I have to say, I just feel like the distinguishing characteristic is, and you and I've talked about, I'm just not going to be embarrassed. I'm going to suck at it. I'm going to be like, oh, wow, I really sucked at that.
Yeah.
Or that I have built up a callus maybe to not performing as I wanted to perform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to really think about that.
Yeah, because the more that you do the thing, it's like the more now bungee jumping. Let's admit here that bungee jumping is probably a terrible example, because you like actually could die.
Right.
Because what
But
I would
it was at the source, the origin of bungee
yes,
jumping. And it was
yes,
from a
yes.
bridge into water. But
Yes, literally, like all of the elements that could culminate together
okay.
to for death to be an outcome was actually there. So okay, let's just say things
Okay.
are usually not that deep. And what I typically say is, the last time you did something that terrified you, hey, guess what? You're not dead. You didn't die. And so I guess that's not to kind of beat the dead horse on the call for courage, but the idea is that in your life, in your work, and as a leader, if you're not making bold steps to do things to affect change in your organization and in your life, then you are remaining stagnant. So that's the call to courage. That's the first thing that Giuliani talks about. Now, the narrative is number two. Create a positive narrative. So,
For
what are
sure.
your thoughts on that?
Well, if courage is a choice, and we argue that is the very first thing, you've got to make a choice to develop and to choose courage. Now, to the positive narrative, I just think crafting the narrative that says that I am not afraid. I am taking a path that is aligned with my values, demonstrative of my character, and I'm
Mhm.
stepping into the arena. Putting it almost like a call to action is the narrative that most of us choose activates us, that activates us to do something bold, to do something courageous, and saying, you know what? Fuck you, fear. Fuck you. It's really, I don't choose for you to live in my head. I'm going to step out and I'm going to take the steps that are going to create the change that needs to be created. Um, so I think part of it is aligning the action with the meaningfulness of the work.
Okay, now it's clicking for me because in the article, he talked about the CEO of BlackRock who reframed sustainability and
Okay.
climate
Yeah.
risk,
Yeah.
and I was just like, ugh, okay. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't. That's inspiring, I'm sure, to someone, but I don't know. It just didn't resonate with me. So this was the one that I was like really grappling with, and so I know what the author is trying to say. I know that he's trying to say is that people respond to emotions. I mean, we have learned in our workforce that like it or not, emotions are what drive performance, how people feel. And I hear a lot of leaders that say, I don't have time to care about how people feel. And yet it's so interesting. You must make time because that is literally what drives performance. And
Sure.
so I think what they're trying to say there is narratives are powerful because in crisis, people look for meaning. And if you can help them reframe the moment, not as something to fear, but as a challenge worth leaning into, then you can mobilize action. So that's how I had to frame it. And here's why. Okay, I'll tell you why. And then you can push back or not. I thought that there's also a danger in narratives because I think narratives can also manipulate because I have worked for leaders that spin stories and hide the truth. And I have seen leaders, package, let's say, layoffs maybe as strategic repositioning. And that's not courage, that's propaganda. So I think we have to be careful because there's a lot of hollow bunny leaders out there that can their narrative has to be anchored in truth. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's not a spin job.
Right. And what you're saying is that largely those that it's a spin job, it's performative. And
Absolutely.
really, I think the importance of a positive narrative is it has to have an origin of truth. It has to be inspiring because it is a call to action. It also has to inspire the courageous actions of the people to carry out the mission. Let me give you an example. So, you and I were both police chiefs in 2020. And at the time where we were all working just tirelessly to get through COVID and realign logistics and operations and finance and admin and all of these things relative to running a police department and provide frontline law enforcement service and deal with all the things. And the horrific tragedy of George Floyd occurred. And then we were thrust into this dual chaos. I transitioned every day and went over to the multi-agency command center in the evening after working all day on, other things. In the evenings, I went over to the multi-agency command center, and each day I had a stillness moment before I entered, and I really contemplated about what the great Stoics, what the great leaders would really say to create a narrative, almost like a commander's intent,
Mm-hmm.
with the men and women that were going out into the streets to safeguard people and to hold offenders accountable, and with all the demonstrations and things. And I found that there was a quote by Winston Churchill that said, "Only a foolish optimist would ignore the difficulty of what lies ahead." And I think that the importance of the positive narrative from my being was to be honest about how difficult it was going to be, and then drive them forward with something inspiring that would get them to focus on the higher calling and the duty and responsibility that they had. So I think that narrative has to be rooted in truth, to your greater point. And if it's been, people can see it. They'll
I
say that
agree.
is total bullshit.
I agree. They can sniff through that bullshit in a second. That's why,
For
yes,
sure.
but there are leaders that do that, and I love that example during COVID because that's what just clicked for me about a narrative. It, I, there most certainly can be inspiration, but I actually find it more rooted in truth, in purpose. And during COVID, the same thing. I'm leading an organization, and I remember facing my people and saying, I don't know what I'm doing here, you guys. I've never lived through a pandemic. I don't know how to lead through one. And I'm sending you out onto the streets where 911 calls don't stop to go handle this. And I'm putting you at risk and your family at risk. And all I did was tell them that this is uncertainty. I don't have
Yep.
the answer, but I said this: we cannot fail. We are being tested in this moment. And the first responders are the only ones who, they don't get to work from home. And so I said, help me, help us. And that is when all the ideas came
Oh,
flooding in. That is how we solved problems.
yep.
That was not my ideas. They were ideas that probably never would have come to the surface but for. Now, that wasn't so much a positive narrative. That was just a truth, just, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me.
Well, there's a realism, and it's really carrying out demonstrative of the very first thing that was urged by this author: create positive narratives to shift perceptions of risk and inspire action.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you
Yeah.
did. That's
Yeah.
what you did.
Yeah.
And
And I suppose
so,
that's it. Yeah.
yeah, so the first is the importance of the narrative, and the second is cultivating confidence. And he argues cultivate confidence through deliberate training and self-efficacy. I just think for me, it was doing it and not being so afraid of this hallucination of what the ramifications would be, right? And
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So I took this a little different than you did. I took cultivating confidence as it's synonymous with competency. Is that
Hmm.
we as leaders, we can stand in front of our people all day and inspire them and make bold decisions. But, and this is where our hollow bunny leaders come in, the people with no substance that have no competency, is that he's just cultivate confidence is just another way of saying have the credibility and the
Yeah.
competency so people will follow you. That's
Yeah.
how I took it.
Oh, right. And often we say we haven't always done it right, but we've done it a lot. And in that, we course correct, right? And so by competence, then you're talking about the training, the education, and the reps. Is that what you're saying builds the competence?
I am, yes, and building the skill mastery, making
Okay.
sure. So, kind of like when we know that when we get into a position that we've never been in before, that we're never ready. You're not ready until you get there. You become ready, and so then you learn. So, I will say that in the examples he gave were like the Facebook whistleblower who risk everything to speak out about harmful practices at Facebook. So I was like kind of thinking of there was a detachment there for me of like how is that cultivating confidence? Is that sort of like the bungee jump? Like this person, Frances Haugen, she was the whistleblower, so she jumped, right? And is that confidence just like I'm going to whistleblow and I'm going to jump off that bridge and bungee and I'm going to be okay?
This is kind of where I had to throw spears on the whole, just that as an example. I just
Yeah.
think she went to a moral high ground to for the greater good, and that gave her standing. I'm not sure that that was the greatest example. I think we are replete with examples in history that give us some that are more relevant, although you'd say, okay, well, give me one. Well, I'm not sure I can.
Right.
But
Mm.
there are so much of this is done by single people, individual actors. Rosa Parks, as one of the examples, as the man who sat at the counter and refused to leave and started a movement.
Oh.
These the courage to actually defy might just be the courageous example that's important. Um, I defied one as a police chief. I defied somebody as a police chief, an elected official who demanded that I go during COVID and arrest very publicly the manager of a Home Depot to send a message. And at the same time, out of the other side of her mouth, she was saying that I needed to support small business, but the big Home Depot should be the example, right? And so there was some defiance that I had because I did not think it was rooted in strong morals, in the law, in my authority. I'm not saying I'm the example of courage, but there are I think there is a thread to be pulled regarding courage and defiance, courage and being a disruptor, courage and advancing. These small, bold steps that then create that micro needle movement that in the aggregate is something so significant that we can't imagine society or an organization without it.
hmm And you hit on something that kind of unlocked a thought for me in the examples that you gave about, Rosa Parks. I would say that it's easy to call yourself brave when you have a safety net. Real courage is risking everything when you don't. And so that I think is the part that the article underplays, that it's easy to romanticize courage when you've got resources. And, this Facebook, had, advocates and lawyers, the whistleblower, but ordinary courage, the kind like Rosa Parks, where it doesn't make headlines, but
Right.
that's often where the deepest deepest leadership lives, when you have everything to lose, when you go against someone knowing that you could potentially lose your job, by defying that, that elected official, but you're so rooted in that moral integrity that you courageously rise up and defy, knowing there are consequences. So I think maybe that is where, that confidence comes from, is knowing that I'm going to be okay even without the resources.
Right. And there was an example about Sully Sullenberger, the pilot who quite famously averted an absolute disaster when birds flew into the engines of his commercial jet he was piloting, and he landed it safely um, in the Hudson River. And he relied on relentless training. And in fact, I was just earlier today, I interviewed someone here in my official capacity. Now that I'm past the work day here, but in my official capacity, he was a Navy SEAL. And we talked about the tempo of deployment for him and the relentless training that he undertook. And I told him, I said, look, the good guys have to be right every time, and bad guys just have to be right once.
Mm-hmm. You're
And
making my point. You're making my
yes,
point about that whole confidence section is actually competency. Sully landed that plane because he has done that drill so many times.
yeah,
In his mind's eye, he was able to fall back on his training. So that's where I would say, I like to call it the competency builds confidence.
yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think what you've done is you've attached these two pieces together because the competence and the confidence are inextricably linked, is what you're arguing. And I couldn't agree more. You've got to have really a large base of the reps. I mean, shoot, we've been talking about this quite a bit. Um, so so we got the positive, courageous choice, the positive narrative, and to cultivate positive narrative, cultivating confidence. And you're saying confidence comes from cultivating competence. Totally agree. And then what about this small step one? I almost i almost think that small calculated moves to gain clarity, I'm not sure that's really reflective of confidence and courage. Do you?
I I do. And here's why. Because I think that in those incremental small steps, we call them small wins. And so every time you have a small win, even when the future is uncertain and we don't wait for that perfect clarity, taking incremental actions like running a pilot program, having, a tabletop, experiment in manageable ways, have the wins and the failures there. And I think that builds momentum. But here is where I struggle. I think that small steps are important, but sometimes I don't think they're enough in the face of urgent problems like mass shootings, systematic injustice,
Agree.
climate collapse. We just don't get the luxury of baby steps. So I don't know. I sometimes think that incrementalism can be an excuse for inaction.
Yeah, and I almost feel like the small steps create. I think they fly in the face of courage. Sometimes I think you have to be bold. I think small steps for the higher moral imperative is not enough. Like you said,
Yeah.
there are such significant things. I'm reading a book about the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, and following the horrific Christchurch mass shooting where 52 people were murdered by a white supremacist that just hated Muslims and went into two mosques and just shot people. Within 10 days, that country had come together and created some significant and meaningful um, legislation regarding how guns were treated in New Zealand. And that was bold. It was bold. It was not a small step. She built a coalition. She built the narrative. She took the massive, courageous step, not because she was confident, not because, well, she's competent, but I suspect it was because she is, she was so moved by the atrocity. She took the courageous step to just get it done in that
Yes.
country. That's what you're
Yes.
talking about.
That's exactly, and what a great example, because I think that there is a time for building muscle slowly. But there's also a
Okay.
time when that rope is freaking burning and you need to
Yep.
leap. And I think
Yep.
that's where leaders have to discern the difference. And that is the art of courage. It's those moments when you override fear and you act decisively, even when the stakes are terrifying.
For sure. And you can't just sit and measure it each step. You've got
Yeah.
to just go and course correct as you're going forward. You got to get the reps and do the work. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Fantastic.
think I think are probably really well aligned on this one, because I think that sometimes the baby steps are what cause stagnation, where it's like, we're not moving. So I think it's relevant in our lives. I mean, you can't run, a 5K from the couch. We all know that. You have to take the steps around the block first. So I think in some instances, it is really good to build the reps, incremental movement, and that really does lead, to major change. But I think what we're talking about when we're talking about facing courage is that we have to be bold. And so I think we both think of that.
Totally
You and
agree.
I are probably more. I think we probably err on the side of being bold than otherwise.
Right. Because we're also present with the unfolding experience. And if it sucks, we're like, okay, well, that sucked. Let's
Okay,
evaluate. Let's course correct. Let's make sense. It still makes sense. And let's keep moving.
Sil, that's it. Right there. I don't want anyone to miss that moment, because that is it. That is the magic moment. And I think that's why leaders fail to make bold decisions, because they are so afraid to be wrong. And I am not, and you are not. I have no problem standing at the podium and saying, here's the decision I made with the information I had. And
Yep.
now, as we're into it, we've realized it wasn't the right decision. I have no problem saying, okay, now let's pause and let's pivot and let's find a
Okay.
better direction, because I was wrong. So that's what people fear, is standing at that podium and saying, I fucked up.
I totally agree with you. And why can't we make change our mind? We get new data. I always say, do you have all the pre-decisional data you need? Yes, right now you make a
Right now.
decision and then four other things come in. You go, all right, well, now we're
Pivot.
going to course correct and we're going to pivot and we're going to do something different. But what used to happen, we saw it. Who was the politician? They're like, oh, he waffled. Like 20 years ago, he said this
Right.
and now he
Because
says
he
that.
flip flopped. Yeah, he flip
He
flopped.
flip flopped. He waffled. It's like, well, fucking A. I like waffles.
Yeah.
Do you like waffles? I like
Love
waffles.
waffles. I love
Love
waffling.
waffles. So
Yeah.
I just think that then we get attached to somebody else's asshole narrative that says, oh, you just waffled. I'd say, oh, hell yeah, I did. Because these other bits of data came in, gave me more information to consider, given the complexity of this issue. Absolutely. I reconsidered, and this is
Yes.
how. But why? It takes courage to
Ugh.
do that, though, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's part of the problem that we're having in this divisive country, is that people are doubling down, when they're starting to realize, oh shit, maybe this wasn't such a good choice that I made. And instead of going, okay,
Yeah.
now that I have new data and information, they're going to double down on it, because I think this all comes back to ego. It's attached to our identity.
Oh,
And
hell.
the same is true when we make decisions in our organizations. It's like, if I admit that I was wrong, that somehow, is the crack in my armor. And that is not true at all. It actually is the antithesis. It builds trust when you can look at your people and say, okay, I got this one wrong. Let's fix it.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah, and right, I'm so down with that. And the next one is something that I owe to you a lot. You and the other people in my tribe, my front row, my whatever, and that's find connection, strategy number 4, right? Because it says, okay, yeah, there are lone heroes. There are people that go out solo and kind of tackle this by themselves, but they're offering that. And I think I would underscore Courage is a team sport. And
Mm-hmm.
behind every brave, courageous leader, there's a group of people. There's a great Navy saying that says it is not the lofty sail, but the unseen wind that propels the ship. And in the same way, courage is not just the lofty leader that is seen taking the action. There are a host of other folks that are influencing the action, the decision making, the array of things that go into bolstering the courageous action for the greater
Mm-hmm.
good. So
I
how do you build that group that will advance you,
Well,
right?
I think that it's twofold, and I love what Gulati said, that courage doesn't grow in isolation.
Oh,
You know, and but here was the other thing that he said: enlist allies, mentors, and critics. And I think that is the key, is that those people in our front row, whatever you want to call them, your tribe, they're not just the people who are always agreeing with you. They're the people who look at you and say, hey, have you considered this? This might be your blind, self. This might be something that you're missing. And so I think that for you and I both, building our allies and mentors and critics are what make us better. And I really do think that those people in your corner help embolden you to be courageous.
oh, for sure. So listening to the big fans, those that will advocate for you, the champions, the advisors, advocates, right? So that person that will champion this action, that will advise you and give you kind of a broader perspective, that may have cultural kind of competence that you don't have, may understand pieces of an organization or an arena that you haven't traveled before. I don't know. And then advocates, right? They're the people that are going to advocate. They're going to say the thing when you're not around. And the critic, you, I've said it 1,000 times a day, that you take criticism better than anybody I know. You're a ruminator. You will ruminate and you will churn on it, but you want to hear the really tough stuff because it makes you better,
Yeah, for
right?
sure. For sure. No, I honestly think that's the secret sauce. Okay, so I do have a little pushback though. On this particular, you wouldn't think that I would have a pushback on enlist allies, mentors, and critics, but I do.
Okay.
Um, I know that this is true of you, and this is true of me and many people that we know, that sometimes we are the only voice in the room. And what I mean by that, we are in spaces where support is non existent. And I'm talking about, I was in a period of my life where I was the only woman in the room full of men. And it doesn't even matter that they were men, it's just that they were all contrarians. And I was saying things that nobody wanted to hear. There was no mentor backing me, there was no critic even helping me or cheering me on. It was just me. And so I want to point out here for those of our listeners who say, yeah, that's cool, but I don't have anybody on my team, is
It's okay.
that that is also sometimes what courage requires. The theory sounds great, but build your courage squad. And sometimes the reality is that you are the squad, that you are the one voice and you have to act anyway.
Ooh, girl. I'm going to call it the Courage Core, CORPS, because the Courage Core really, uh, this whole thing argues that you may not have a mentor. You may not have that uh, that less seen group of people in behind the curtain. But man, you've got to build a courage core outside of that primary group in order to elevate you and to continue urging you to do the very important work. I don't think we should um, ignore that, because there are a lot of people that come to us and say, look, yeah, I am the only one speaking about this. And so our answer to that is to consider finding connections outside of that room to continue challenging you, to be your mentor, your advocate, your champion and advisor. And perhaps the person that will criticize outside of that room. Find that connection, develop that connection outside. It's a team
Love that.
sport for sure.
Love that. I really love that advice. Yeah. The next one is one that I think you're much better at than I am, and that is the last strategy is self care and calm. And Gulati argues that leaders who have grounding rituals like reflection,
Mm,
meditation,
yeah.
exercise, they find ways to manage stress and they can think clearly and stay ready and steady in crisis. And you are really good with reflection and meditation, and that is the thing that I struggle with, is that stillness, and I have to force myself to do it because I just can't seem to slow down, all the cogs and the wheels and everything moving, and you've taught me to be better there.
Well, that's why it's called a practice. It's
Yeah.
a meditation practice, it's a mindfulness practice, and having emotional regulation, the ability to influence your own experiences and emotions is really vital. I gotta say, in thinking about this, you're always so generous with the compliment around this. I have lost my shit. I mean, and I have a couple times where I just can't forgive myself for losing my shit. I mean, no harm was done. And it was in front of somebody I don't even respect anymore. Anyway, she's just, yeah, I'm like, yeah. There was no crime, but I lost my shit. I did not emotionally regulate. And so I think the real urging here is embodying and practicing and intentionally committing to regulation techniques helps us address that fear and that anxiety. And it is, if we lose our mind, like we lose our self-regulation, we lose our fine motor skills, we lose our ability to speak, we lose the broad kind of perspective and the environment that we have the ability to take in to inform our decision making and our action. And we cannot lose that perspective. We Resilience, reframing, regulation. And this is all really, really important. And I guess I want to say this. So many people go to, okay, this is what could go wrong. This is how this could fail. And I refuse to think in that way. I refuse to think in that way. I really think about, okay, how could this advance what we're doing? How could this support this mission? How could my standing here, how could this action I'm about to take do good right now and perhaps in the long term? I just don't think maybe I'm broken. I don't know. I don't think about like how could this go wrong?
Hmm. Yeah, so I do. I actually think that's part of the process. And maybe this is kind of where you say that I'm really good at criticism, because
You are.
every idea I have, I'm like, okay, find the weak spots, throw spears, tell me where this might go off the rails. So I like to play in worst case scenarios, but then I like to focus
Oh,
on the best thing that could possibly happen. Okay, now once
yeah.
we achieve this mission, this desired outcome, but I want all of the thorns ahead of time, because those are my blind spots.
Well, and you're really good at it. And so many books that I've read say you should really do that. You should think about what are all the things that could go wrong. I'm really bad at it.
Hmm.
I'm
Well,
really
that's
bad at
okay.
it because I'm like, well,
That's why that's why you bring in your tribe of people, the people
uh,
that are your the allies that say, okay, I love those people, the contrarians that are like, okay, here's why this won't work. I love that. So I think that's where you just employ a
sure.
team of people to be,
Well,
kind of, that's where, they can leverage you.
Well, and I can catastrophize like nobody's business, but okay. I guess I do really think that there are a number of strategies that he offered that support this urging that you and I have really put into the full view of folks right now, given the the difficulty of what's out at the environment, and as disruption is accelerating, and we're seeing courageous steps being taken by folks, and we have seen so many examples of absence of courage.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
just think that if we have these 5 ways to develop courage that we just talked about, and so to have a positive narrative and consider the positive narrative, to cultivate the confidence, to take small steps, finding connections, and staying calm and clear and resilient, given the courage that is needed by every leader. Um, so, if you're to focus on one thing as kind of like the big takeaway in this conversation, is there one thing that really kind of comes into view for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's that courage pays. I mean, if you think of
Hmm.
any bold action that you've taken in your life that scared the shit out of you, and you apply that same metrics to in your organization that you were leading, it's always I should say it's not because we played it safe, but because we balance discipline with bold moves. And for me, and looking back in my life, uh, courage has always paid off. And so I think the point is that courage is not just a virtue, it's also a competitive advantage. And boldness in uncertainty, I think, pays dividends. That's been my biggest takeaway, not only from this article, but from my life, looking back at all the times I was bold and not and still afraid, but acted anyway.
Right. And I think we can call on our experience to really come up with examples where even doing nothing or walking away was the most courageous thing that we could do.
Mm,
Standing still, being silent, that is
yeah.
also demonstrative of courage. What I don't want folks to kind of misunderstand is that, bold favors, bold action, right? Favors, um, is favored, but bold action doesn't always mean that it's action
Oh,
in
girl,
a
that's a whole
moving
other podcast.
kinesthetic sense.
That is a whole other podcast. It's like we often say, speak up even if your voice shakes. I actually wrote a whole chapter in my book about this, and it's called "Know When to Shut the Fuck Up." I don't know if that will change because it's vulgar, but
I
I
love it.
love what you just said. That's a whole other podcast that I think we can talk about. But this one I think is about boldness. So I don't know. My recap is that courage isn't a theory, it's a choice we make in messy,
Yeah.
ordinary moments. And so I would love to leave our listeners with just a question that you have to answer for yourself. Where are you in your life right now that you need to override fear? And which one of these strategies that Sil and I talked about could actually help you this week, even if it's imperfect?
Yeah. And that's going to be a big ask of everybody. And it's going to take some real introspection. And we urge you to just be still.
That's right.
Just be
Mm-hmm.
still and let it come up. And then make an intention where you are going to take some action on behalf of this courageous necessity. And the old adage, fortune favors the brave, not the
Yep.
cautious, is
There you
really,
go.
really important. Kristen, thanks for nudging me into this, and really keeping courage and, punching fear in the face in 2025. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to bring my lipstick when I see you in September when we go to the Bears game together. I'm going to put it on you. I'm going to put this bold red lipstick on
Okay.
you.
Do you know what
That's
you're wearing?
courageous.
Yeah. Yeah,
To the
it
Bears
is.
game? To
Oh,
the
yeah.
Bears game? I'm going to wear
Yeah.
my Bears attire, Sylvia.
Okay. Okay. I know I have so much to pick from. I just don't know which one I'm going to pick.
I'm bringing
We'll
body
figure
paint.
it out. um, can I say Don't be that courageous. Cover that shit up, sister.
Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. If you like our podcast, please subscribe. Please like it. Please review it and tell everyone that you know about it. You can follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. If you don't like it, just move along. There's nothing more to see here. Our very own Ted Madden produces this podcast, and the song you're about to hear was written and performed for us exclusively by my son, Jake, and his accomplished friends, Fabian and Zoe. Everyone, keep filling your own buddies and continue adding substance to others. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
When you look inside, what do you find? Are you content to fall behind? When you lose your way and you've lost your why, have courage and get ready to fight the hollow buddy. When the way ahead is covered in smoke and you're tired and you're scared and you're losing hope, you'll open your heart and your eyes to see a challenge and a question. Why not me? To fight the hollow buddy. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow buddy. When the challenge ahead scares you to death, you tame the imposter inside instead. To change the world, you've got to start small. It takes a leader to say, I don't know it all. And I know I'm gonna fall, but I'll pick it up and come back stronger. Failing forward and moving onward, doing the hard thing and the right thing, forever fighting the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow buddy. If you're tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. You're tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. Monsters are